Hello, come on in. Welcome back to the podcast. I am the host, John Cartwright. I thought what we might talk about is another kind of buzz topic, which is all of this sort of mindfulness. And there's some really neat things out there about mindfulness and how important it is. But I also think sometimes we've sort of put this Western philosophy on mindfulness instead of actually looking at it for what it is. And more importantly, trying to mold this mindfulness to the individual and what actually works for you, as opposed to this recipe, way that we sort of do cookie cutter in the West of sort of like, what's the solution? Just give me the solution. And one solution fits all. I use the example of, say, something like yoga. And, yoga in the Western world looks a certain way. When you say the word yoga, everyone expects sort of these mats and some spandex and certain postures, and like stretches and holds, and sometimes it's hot and sometimes it's normal temperature. That's about the variety, or it's hot, like longer holds or longer poses. But really, like, yoga means union. And the whole purpose of that was to find, there's all these different ways that you could find that union, that, I guess, union with a higher self or whatever you want to call it. And so, but we kind of like boxed it into, this is yoga because there's like some money to be made. And if I said to you, mindfulness is exactly the same conversation in my eyes. It's trying to find that thing that really, if you look at, say, yoga, and the purpose of why you're doing all of these things is to kind of quieten down the mind. If you think about the monkey mind, I've got a really active monkey mind. If you talk to my poor wife, I download all the time so I can get present. And at times she just says to me, just go out for a damn run, man. Or go out and do some exercise. You need to get out and kind of quiet it down, just tire out the monkey, if you like. And so, for me, meditation has, for instance, been something that I have never really been able to get into. And I know meditation's hard. Like it's a work in progress to sit still and clear your thoughts. And it's something that I still will partake in every now and then, in particular, if some of my other areas aren't available. But what I would say to you is, if you want to think of mindfulness and how to get into that space where you've got a quieter mind, so you're just not busy in your thoughts and you're not chasing your thoughts everywhere, it's a matter of finding what works for you. And the answers are probably already there. If you can think about the things that when you're doing it, you don't really think of anything. Now, I hate getting into the masculine, feminine sort of energy conversation, but I think it is kind of relevant, because when I've worked with men and women, sometimes I will shift the language around these things, because in my experience, when I'm dealing with sort of women, athletes or businesswomen, quite often their mindfulness is, for want of a word, expansive. Okay, so like when they're connected is when they're sort of, their mindfulness or their access to mindfulness is at its best. And again, that's not like a hard and fast rule, because people are people, but and there's varieties. So you just treat the individual for how they are, and you can only do that by getting to know them. And then if I just look at, say, men, and I look at kind of like that somewhat masculine way at looking at things, most men are sort of seeking this point of no thought. They just don't want to think anymore. And if we look at an example, like if you look at social media, say look on YouTube, for instance, I know there's a lot of how-tos on, say, YouTube and social media, but you look at the vast majority of people that participate in that and are on it, the vast majority of users are male. They're men. Why is that? And a lot of the time, when I'm on these things and sometimes death scrolling, my wife's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I just don't want to think anymore. And it's not a healthy vice, but it's what I'm pursuing. I'm not pursuing a bunch of information. I'm trying to get away, if you like. I'm trying to quieten down my thoughts. But the most effective thing for me is to go and have fun with expression of my body, like movement. Now, my personal journey is I developed a heart arrhythmia in my 20s when I was back playing sport, and it progressively got to a point where I couldn't get my heart rate very high before my heart would go out of rhythm for 2 or 3 days. And I got so used to it. Most people go off to the hospital when that happens, and I would just live with it. Now, it becomes riskier when you're older, and I had surgery for it a few years ago, and unfortunately it started to creep back. And so my expression is usually movement and sort of exercise to the point where I push my body, where I don't think about things anymore. My mind goes clear. I can't access that anymore, well, in the same capacity that I used to. So I have to find a different avenue. So now it's like, what's the next best thing for me to be clear? Now, the other thing is when I'm in conversations with people where we're talking about anything that's possible and we're talking about potential, and even like a man behind the scenes here, we have chats, and if he sort of said to you, what's it like talking to John? I'm a million miles an hour. It's just thoughts like flowing out of me. But in terms of my energy, the opposite's happening. I'm in the zone to an extent. My mind's not so busy in that. It's actually getting to offload all of that, and I'm present, and nothing else matters other than that conversation with that individual. And so when I haven't got access to expressing my body, I've got to find people that I can download my thoughts to, and they either give them back and we build these conversations. It's like this energy exchange that builds. That's hard to find because a lot of the time people are like trying to pull energy from you, if you like. You know, they're wanting to get theirs, or they want to be smarter than you. And you probably know this yourself when you have these conversations with people that kind of give you energy, and you get off the conversation like, man, I love talking to that person. Like, that makes me feel so good. Like there's an exchange there. Or you get off the phone with somebody like, man, I feel like more tired now than when I got on that conversation. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. And so for you, it's this mindfulness conversation is finding what's the thing that quietens down your mind the most. And you'll see so many people start loving, say, something like running, because they discover runners, there's studies now to say that you actually get into a state of meditation on long runs. It's why all these, runners, if you've ever had to try and help runners like I have over the years, they're like crazy junkies. Or especially people that have had addictions, they replace their addiction with something like running and exercise, because really it's if you have to say to somebody to stop running for a little bit or try and ramp up their running slowly, it's hard work because they're just desperate to run. They're desperate to go back into that feeling. So actually your best way to deal with them is to try and do exactly what I just said about myself, is to try and find another outlet for them. What is it? It could be like creative. It could be like talking to somebody. It could be connection with people. It could be like, hey, they need some alone time. They just need space. It's finding that thing that your mind is quiet. That's that mindfulness, right? And so the other example is like, people talk about trying to bring mindfulness to situations. And I agree with that. Like, when you're in the middle of an argument and discussions, trying to bring mindfulness to it, I think that's the next conversation that we could unfold. But the first part is to be in when you're in a state of mind where the arguments don't really happen. And if you sort of looked at that and you just say, well, that's usually because you've been taking care of that outlet, if you like consistently, you're just a different person. When you haven't had access to that, it boils up, and then all of a sudden these arguments occur, and someone says, oh, you got to bring mindfulness to it. And it's like, it doesn't no one in the history of calming down ever calmed down when someone said, calm down, mate. It's when you're in it, you're in it. And usually that's that kind of monkey brain of yours that you've got to learn to tame. You've got to learn to manage it. And so another example that I'd say to you is when injuries occur and changes of life, like what happened to me with my heart, they're extremely challenging. If the other thing that I would say my outlet in the past was unfortunately like alcohol. It was substances, and with alcohol, I could get into a similar space. I just let go and I liked it, it feels awesome. But with my heart issues, I had to give away drinking. And so it got to that point where you really had to practice what you preach because there's no outlet now. Where am I going to go? And for me, I sort of thought I'm both extroverted and introverted. But the thing that I know makes me the most calm, I only sort of learned after I was in conversations with these individuals, reaching out to people that gave me energy, if you like. Our conversations went to this place of anything's possible, and there's potential everywhere. Like we could turn anything around. And anyone that was like in a heavy drinking session with me, inevitably they used to sometimes try and get away from me because there would be some deeper meaningfuls coming, because I'd even try and access it whilst I was under the influence, if you like. So another example is with the individuals that I was working with. This was a really successful individual. He was sort of worth $100 million plus in wealth. He was having ongoing injuries, and the problem was his body. He kind of felt like his body just kept letting him down. And this is an individual who loves extreme sports, like anything motocross, loves like extreme sort of surfing, loves helicopters, all these sorts of things. Like leads an unbelievable life. But the problem was he kept coming off and having accidents, and was out of the game for sort of 18 months to 2 years at a time, with fracture this and compression fracture here. And the thing is, just kind of kept getting this individual down. They'd kind of get somewhere and they come back, and then there's all this hesitation. And now all of a sudden, their business world, they love the business world because they're just achieving things, but then everything else is falling by the wayside, and sort of almost this enjoyment in life is starting to kind of go, business is the only thing that's going well, and so I may as well do that, but it doesn't really fill me up. It's just kind of good. I'm not getting this outlet. And so when I was talking with this individual, I just said, look, if you think about, one of his main goals was to say to get back to motocross riding. And I had this conversation, well, who do you go out motocross riding with? He's like, I go out with this mate of mine, but he's so good, man. He's like so fit and he just charges, and I try and keep up with him. And that's when I kind of keep having these accidents. Like, okay. I said, is he into anything else that you're into? He's like, actually, yeah, I don't mind surfing. He quite likes surfing. I said, are you as good at him at surfing, or are you better than him? He's like, actually, I'm probably a better surfer than he is. I was like, but what about with your current level of fitness? He's like, yeah, even with my current level of fitness, I'm probably a better surfer. I'm like, great. Go surfing with that individual. Don't go bike riding with him. So have you got any other mates that aren't as good as motocross riders as you, but just froth just as much as you do for motocross riding? He said, oh, yeah, I've got a mate that loves it, and he's not very good though. Perfect. Go motocross riding with him and pick your things and make him follow you. And so you access that space where you're getting these individuals that you get your fix, and you get that moment of clarity and that release. But you're not pushing it. You're not redlining it, because quite simply, I can help you get back to that level that you want to. I can help you become, do elite riding if you want, but you've got 4 years of work here. You're going to need to do 4 years of work. And I mean, like, you're a quarter of the way to what you need to get your body to. And it's all there for us. We can do it even if you're busted up. I understand you've got all these problems, but you can sort it out. It's just time and loading over time. And something kind of clicked in him, I remember his face changing and this smile coming, because all of a sudden we could switch that search for this sort of release and this ability to have this mindfulness, this release, so he could come back and be present with his family and with work. He could see it. He could be like, oh yeah, I can go and still get all of those releases that I want without this sort of risk of injury and having to chase the dragon for that hit of adrenaline. I can still get it without redlining it and trying to keep up with someone that's better than me, and eventually coming off and smashing my body. So the thing I would say to you around this mindfulness conversation, it's hugely important, but I'd almost kind of say to you, what's your release in life? And if it's a negative one, like drugs for a lot of people has become the answer. Within this culture, having to personally give up alcohol, man, it made me so present to how many people fell off the wayside, how many people just cut me off. They wouldn't invite me to things because like, oh, he doesn't drink. I even had a mate who used to introduce me to people, introduce me to new people and say, oh, John's heart's messed up, so he doesn't drink. Because I said, what the hell are you saying that for? They don't need to know. It's like, yeah, because they're going to think you're weird that you don't drink. You know, that vice that was gone for me, like people fall by the wayside. But, you know, in some respect, this whole mindfulness conversation, everything that's happening to you is happening for you, if you like. You know, the greatest challenge I've probably had to face in the last 10 years is this bloody heart of mine, especially because I'm an individual who talks about health. You know, like I'm about helping people with their health. And I'm sitting here going, oh, I feel like a fraud because my heart's messed up. Like, you know, but I can honestly say to you now, if I went back, this is only in hindsight, I wouldn't actually change anything because this heart of mine taught me to get off alcohol. It taught me to open things up. It taught me to sort of look for what makes me tick and not just escape. It made me kind of go, oh yeah, really exercise is my outlet. And when I don't have that, what else am I going to do? And then it made me connect with people that actually expand my life and expand my thinking and like listening to me waffle and talk rubbish sometimes. And so my life is fuller. It's become smaller. My group has become smaller. But, you know, that's also a thing that we get so obsessed with. I've got all this big circle of people or all my people. And actually, like, when it comes down to it, just, you know, if you want to find out how small your circle is, give up drinking. That will certainly tell you how big your circle really is because, man, especially if you live in, say, like Australia or New Zealand, man, that cuts out a lot of people real quick. So this whole mindfulness conversation, instead of this whole thing, it's got to be sort of meditation. It's got to be stop what you're doing and have a think and try and think presence and mindfulness. Like all of that stuff's great. But if we take a step back and say, well, why don't you just create the environment for yourself, how to manage this monkey brain of yours, this monkey mind that gets away and wants to express itself and its frustrations and go, how do I manage that best? Because by doing things consistently on a consistent basis, and especially if your loved ones and the ones around you understand what that is for you, you know, it's great that my wife says to me, hey, you need to get out, or you need to go and talk to, you know, somebody else who wants to download and can contribute to your conversations because I'm full up. Like, you know, I'm not going to be able to give you energy. It's, if anything, I'm going to sort of take it for the time being because I've just got nothing to give. And for me, I know my wife, she just needs time and space. She is the same as me with exercise, you know, like she needs to get out and just be in nature. And she is, I've never seen someone love trees so much as my wife. I just know she needs to get amongst nature and get amongst trees because, man, then I'm just like, there's my wife. She's back again, you know, when things get tough. And it's me making sure she has that space to do that because I've never seen her be able to sit still with meditation for very long. It's just not her thing. Like yoga, she's kind of liked yoga, but never really got that fix out of it. Whereas she's just an athlete, you know, and for her, it's like being in nature, going on a mission. You know, my wife and our relationship, if we're on a mission somewhere, man, we're at our tightest. Like, you know, for the last 2 years, I haven't probably shared this yet. We've been traveling around Australia with our 2 children. And my favorite part of the trip is the sights and the sounds. It's all been fantastic. But personally, my thing that I just get so almost emotional thinking about it now is when we drive off from somewhere for the first time onto the next place. And we go down and we used to have this sort of routine where we just blast this music and the kids were in on it with us. And we're just charging down this, you know, big open freeways and or highways in Australia that are just, you know, flat and there's nothing. And we're beaming and we're singing and we would wind down the windows and we scream at the top of our lungs as we go down the road. Like to me, I just picture my wife's face and my kids' face whenever I want to feel good and it's that adventure. And like, if my wife and I don't have that, then we're just never going to get the best out of each other. And that's our connection, is that adventure and knowing it. So knowing what makes your partner tick and knowing what that is. Like, for some of you, your partner may love golf, and it might be annoying because they disappear for 6 hours. And you're like, frick's, like, I want to take off for 6 hours at a time. But for them, it might be so important. It's their vice. It's their thing that they're so passionate about. And withholding that from them, you're not going to get the best out of them. It's their happy place, So I guess, what I'd say to you is find that major thing that has your mind quietened down, where there's not so much chatter and you're present and you're doing things. Then that comes first and foremost. All that other stuff that's, doing the rounds of mindfulness, and all these people that talk the talk and then you actually get to know them behind the scenes and they're angry and having arguments just like everybody else. That's the most important thing. And when I'm working with individuals, it's a matter of finding their outlet and making sure that they've got that space of that space in their mind where there's clarity, because in particular, this is important for creatives and business people. You've got to be able to find that space, because that's where creativity occurs. Like most people know that, and there's neuroscience to back that up with ideas. You always get your best ideas in the morning, like in the shower. It's because you're still in certain brain states. And when you don't have those outlets, you can't even access the certain brain states that actually give you all of that stuff for free. So I hope that's helped. I hope that's cleared up some things, and you don't feel so much pressure to go and sit and meditate or go and do yoga if you don't enjoy it. Go and find the thing that quietens down your mind, and you don't have to justify it to anybody. It could be yarning. See if you can make it a healthy one. Alcohol was my outlet. It's never going to be that again. And I'm better for that. It's hard. I've had to change tact, but it's been the best thing that ever happened to me. And so for yourself, if you have to change tact, if you can't do something anymore to the extent that you used to do it, and you have to change tact, just keep searching. And the answers might be more simple than you think. So until next time, it's bye from me.